tagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol!
Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host, Shamik Paul, and unfortunately we've got another disappointing result to discuss tonight after a toothless Milan were held to a goalless draw at home by Torino. They failed to show any real poise or class in the final third to find a breakthrough, and although they did have their chances, I feel like it's evident now that the problem is well beyond bad luck, as seems to be the excuse that's peddled out every week. Looking at the positives to start with, I felt like Milan dictated the tempo of the game. We enjoyed a real sense of control over it, which limited Torino's threat. But unfortunately for me, that's got to be the minimum expectation from Milan, especially at home. It's a positive, but with a negative slant. Looking at the standout negatives from the game, I still feel like there's an obvious lack of cohesion and understanding in this team, as seen with the number of moves that broke down with errant passes. There are various players guilty of doing it, whether it was passing it straight out of play, whether it was in front or behind. Just no sort of direction and understanding of where teammates are on the pitch. So I feel like that was a real negative. Add to that the fact that there was too many players that were too static at times. There was no movement, and again it just becomes slow, predictable. Milan continue to look for Suso, continue to push it out wide to pump it into the box, and it's just far too predictable. And for a team like Torino, who are very organised, you could almost expect that to happen. So for another shutout, I wasn't that too surprised. So real negatives to take away from the game there. Let's start with Montella. With his manager rating out of 10, I've given him a 5. I think a lot of us said on Twitter after Thursday's win that he will rotate and he will bring Kalinic back, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And ultimately, it simply isn't working. Not only that, but I would also criticise Montella for waiting too long to make his changes. Again, I think he waits for the 70-minute mark to make changes, which is very frustrating in games like this where things aren't working, something needs to change, and he just continues with it into the second half. So that was another problem. But ultimately, the biggest problem I have is the incompetence in attack. And for me, that starts with Montella. That's the work on the training ground with these players, building the understanding and having a system of play. I don't expect us to be like Napoli. I don't expect us to be like Roma, the teams that play really good football but have been together for a long time. So I'm not expecting miracles so soon in the season, especially with so many new players that came in over the summer. But by this stage, I would have expected us to be playing a bit better football and having an understanding on the pitch. So for me, Montella gets a 5 out of 10, and he's being left open to criticism, and that's taking into account the kind of performances that we're producing. So not particularly impressed with Montella. But as for the players, let's kick things off with Gianluigi Donnarumma. Didn't have a great deal to do, but what I would argue in his favour is that a mark of a great goalkeeper is that they have to stay focused throughout a game, even when they're not busy, and step up when required. That is exactly what Donnarumma did to deny Belotti with a really good save. So for me, Donnarumma gets a 7 out of 10. Christian Zapata also gets a 7 out of 10. I feel like we've criticised him a lot over the years, and rightly so. Number of mistakes that he's made that's cost us, just a real clumsy sort of play that we've seen from him over the years. I think he's starting to wipe that out of his game. Touch wood, I'm not cursing him, probably am, but I feel like he's playing at a really high, consistent level every time he's come into the team to replace Musacchio. So solid defensively, useful on the ball. Zapata gets a 7 out of 10. Leonardo Bonucci gets a 6. I felt like he put in a decent defensive shift. He looked composed and strong on the ball, dealing with Belotti, who was relatively quiet apart from that chance. I feel like Bonucci may have tried a little bit too much in an attacking sense. I would praise him for trying to break forward and prise Torino open. I think we needed that sort of penetration from someone. But ultimately, when it mattered in the final third, whether it was him taking a shot rather than crossing it in, whether it was an errant pass, the move broke down, there was always the end product wasn't there. And I'm not expecting miracles from a defender, but for him to be so positive and get into those positions, then it was a little bit disappointing. He couldn't add the finishing touch to it. So Bonucci gets a 6. Alessio Romagnoli gets a 6, perhaps a little bit harsh. I've seen a few 7s floating around, so I'm giving him a 6, but ultimately, similarly to the other two defenders, I felt like he was impressive defensively to nullify Torino's threat. Wasn't as effective as he usually is with the ball at his feet, I would say, but ultimately nothing wrong with his performance, nothing particularly excellent about his performance, so I've given him a 6. Also given Frank Kessie a 6. I felt like it was a better performance from him. He used his physical strength, his tireless work ethic to really battle hard in the midfield, to kind of win that midfield battle with Torino. Still needed a bit more for me to kind of mark him up a little bit. I felt like we're still missing his, those breaking runs forward that he was so good at earlier in the season. If he can add that to his game, then he can easily start having a real impact on his team again. So a positive step. I felt like it was a much improved performance to what we've seen in recent weeks, but Kessie gets a 6 from me. Ricardo Montella gets a 7 out of 10. I'm going to start off with the brilliant block that he had to deny Iago Falque. I think it was a combination of him and Donnarumma with a double save, but for him to kind of get it stuck in between and get that ball safe, that was a real big moment in the game. So nudges him a little bit above the rest in terms of ratings. But also I think he was just tidy in possession, kept Milan ticking. And ultimately, overall, I felt like it was a pretty decent display. I think you can still argue that there's issues with his mobility and his stamina to get around the pitch and really be that dominant figure in that role. But ultimately, taking on its face value, I think Montella did a decent job. So I'm going to give him a 7 and give him some praise. Giacomo Bonaventura gets a 5 out of 10. Really am disappointed with Jack. This is nothing like the Jack that we loved watching for the last 2 years or so. I honestly don't know whether it's a combination of a lack of match fitness or just a lack of confidence. I just felt like he kept overcomplicating things in possession. He was slowing things down. He was hesitating too much. Don't know whether that's a bit of confusion over his role in the team, whether he's not used to what he's supposed to be doing. I don't know, but it's not the Jack that we know, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that he does return sooner rather than later, because we do need his creative qualities. So 5 out of 10, really disappointed with Bonaventura. Suso only rates a little bit better. Argument perhaps for a 5, but I've given him a 6. Always Milan's first choice to try and make something happen. Didn't think his early part of the game was that great. I don't know whether there's some confusion over his positional switch in the new formation in the system, but didn't particularly get it right in key situations, whether he was dragging it to the byline, whether he was cutting in on his left. Still argue in his favour that he was one of our more dangerous players, so that's why I think I've given him a 6, but ultimately it's not one of his best performances, so yeah, I've settled with a 6. Ricardo Rodriguez also gets a 6. I think he was more concerned with his defensive duties, and that was dropping back and really started looking after Mbaye Niang, and he did that very well in his defence, so top marks for that. Probably could have done a little bit more going forward with his crossing and his delivery from the left-hand side, but give him the benefit of the doubt this one. Kept his concentration, positional sense was really good, didn't get caught out with Niang's pace or any other Torino players, so decent enough. 6 out of 10 for Rodriguez. Andre Silva gets a 5 out of 10. I still feel he's lacking that clinical edge to make his mark in games, but on the plus side, he's dropping back into space, he's linking up play, he's making runs off the ball, he's very active, and if you're not scoring goals, then that's something I personally feel you need to see from a striker. So again, as much as I would love to see him break his duck in Serie A, I think like there was positive aspects of his performance, so I'm going to give him credit for that, but needs to be stronger holding the ball up. Felt like he was shrugged off a little bit too much. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for Silva, but fingers crossed we can get some goals out of him in the league sooner rather than later. Nikola Kalinic gets a 4 out of 10. Booed off the pitch by the fans, sarcastically gave them a clap. Obviously wasn't particularly happy with the reaction that he got coming off. So it's kind of difficult to be too harsh on him because I don't feel that helps, but it was more than deserved. It was a similar story with him to recent games. Didn't do much in the build-up of play, fluffed his lines in front of goal. Obviously there were a couple of offside calls, but there was one in the first half, of course, where he had a shot, skimmed the post, went out for a goal kick when he should have done better, at least found the target, but again, fluffed his lines. So I personally feel now Montella has to protect him. I think he has to take him out of the team, give him a run out in the Europa League, give him a run out in the Coppa Italia, resort back to Cutrone and Silva, and just leave Kalinic out for the time being because he's open to criticism. And for me, I feel the coach needs to step in and be strong. He obviously likes him. He's one of his favoured options up front, but the way things are going at the moment, I feel like the change needs to happen and Kalinic needs to come out of the team for a while. So will we see that? I don't know, but for me, Kalinic 4 out of 10 on this occasion, really disappointing. Calhanoglu and Cutrone don't get ratings because they came on fairly late, still had about 20 minutes in the game, but Calhanoglu, late chance, drew a decent save out of Sirigu, but there are also a bit of disappointing moments on the ball where he kind of just miscontrolled it and went out for out of play, so some positive and negative aspects, but improvement on Bonaventura perhaps. Cutrone, again, similar story with him, not enough time to make a decent impact on this occasion, but you know what he does, puts himself about, chases balls down, gives Milan a lift off the bench, and you can't ask for more from him in that kind of 15-minute period, so a positive display from him. So guys, moving on to your Twitter questions and comments. Precious Mowgli, at Precious Mowgli on Twitter. Silva Catrone is our best pairing up front. Hard to disagree with you, especially on the evidence of the last 2 games. I do feel that has to be the one moving forward. So again, we're probably going to get that in the Europa League, and then who knows what Montella's going to do next week in the Serie A. Again, he'll probably switch back to Kalinic and frustrate us all. But yeah, I do agree. I think Silva Catrone is the best way forward. I did feel there were sort of signs that there was a bit of chemistry between the two in their build-up play. Again, you've got to take into consideration the opposition, but I felt like there were positive signs from them in terms of playing off each other and actually looking like an attacking pair. So I definitely agree with that point. Troy Vaughan at Hark the Sound, expected a draw, bad performance. Again, probably similar to you, especially with our problems breaking teams down. The draw was probably the one on the cards. Stefano Giacomara at Fanonono, is Kalinic the worst signing of the summer? Probably have to say yes. I think Bonucci's turned a corner. He was up there. Biglia, not particularly impressing me. I've moaned about him on the podcast a number of times, so may put him up there. But given the way Kalinic has deteriorated so badly, we obviously had a couple of goals from him early on when he started featuring, but since then it's just all been downhill, and there's really nothing positive you can take away from his performance. Again, some might argue Çalhanoğlu might be up there as well. He's been particularly annoying and frustrating at times, but you have seen flashes from him of him being able to do something. So I'd probably have to say yes, Kalinic is the worst signing of the summer so far. Thoughts on the 4-4-2 formation, and should they use that moving forward? What is the main reason for Milan's struggles so far this season? As far as the system goes, I still want to see a 4-3-3. I want to see a flat 4, Romagnoli and Bonucci at the heart of the defence. I don't care whether he prefers a back 3. That is ultimately, for me, that is the best formation that we can have. Back 4, 3 in the middle. There's an argument to be made for every midfielder in the squad, I guess, but you can take your pick from the midfield. But ultimately, all I want to see is Bonaventura out on the left wing, Suso out on the right, and Silva through the middle. That would be my preference, and I think you'd see more from Jack. I think that would suit him better. You'd see the player that we know that's there, that we've not seen for this season so far. And Suso, I believe, is most effective when he's out on that right wing, cutting in and doing his thing. So for me, a 4-3-3 would be the best formation. What is the one main reason for Milan's struggles so far this season? I'm finding it more and more difficult not to point the finger of blame at Montella. I think the players do have to take some responsibility. You know, they have underperformed, and we expect more from them, and rightly so. But for me, Montella is becoming the main reason. As I mentioned earlier, that I just don't feel there's any cohesion, any understanding between the players, and I'm struggling to understand how that's even possible after almost 20 competitive games in all competitions this season. I don't have an explanation for that. So for me, I know it's easy to point the finger of blame at the manager. He's the one that gets all the flack, but ultimately I'm struggling to see what else there is, whether it's his tactical setups, his personnel choices, his rotation, getting it wrong, his faith in certain players. But the big one for me is that he hasn't been able to string all these pieces together and make us look a decent attacking outfit. And for me, this deep into the season, there's no explanation for that. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with the crowd, be a sheep if you like, and say Montella is probably the main reason for our struggles. Joey at jgallo518, why do they only start playing after the 70th minute? I have no idea. It's absolutely right. There's a common trend there that you spotted, and it's spot on, but certainly something wrong there. And you could argue, yes, something needs to change, but the question is, will it? It's been going on for so long. It's difficult to see anything changing, but it's a very good point there. Antonio Notabartello at Anotaba. Kalinic shouldn't have done that. He should understand the fans' stance after watching him game after game without any results. His job is to score goals. If I was that unsuccessful in my job, I'd be fired. #understand fans. Brilliant point, Antonio. Can't argue with that. I feel like it's a difficult situation for him to be in, of course. I feel, it's not good for his confidence. No player wants to be booed. He's gone out there to do his best. It's not happening for him. So to have 56,000 fans, I think, were in the San Siro on Sunday, to have them all jeer him, boo him, give him abuse from the stands, it's not nice. But I feel like you're just going to antagonise the situation by clapping them back. It's not what he should have done. He should have... The worst part of it, if you ask me, was probably walking off the pitch. I think Bonucci tried to push him on, hurry him up, where it's 0-0. Get off the pitch, let us get Catrone on and win this game. He was taking his time coming off the pitch, which was probably the most sort of annoying factor of it. But certainly agree with you. Excellent point on that. So Kalinic has got a lot of work to be done to turn the fans' view of him around. Bori Oludemi at Bori Canes. Utterly frustrating performance. If we don't get rid of Montella, we're doomed. Our only chance to get into the Champions League is Europa League, and I don't know how we can with Montella. Borre, completely share all your concerns, but the problem is where is the cut-off point for Montella? When would he go? I genuinely don't know where the cut-off point is anymore. I felt like the last international break was the best opportunity we had to change it, but they didn't. They keep throwing their support behind him, so who knows? But again, and also raise question marks. Excellent point. I do believe the Europa League is now effectively the best possible chance we have, but I've got no confidence to suggest that when we come up against the better teams that we're going to go all the way. So that's a massive concern as well. AC Milan at J Lombardi 85. Montella should have at least let Cutrone come on beginning of second half. Absolutely agree with that. Spot on. Bonaventura has slowly lost himself. Can't win one-on-ones. Again, picked up on that as well. Completely agree with you. I don't know whether this is a fitness thing, whether confidence has just gone, whether the injuries are taking their toll and he's just had to adapt and change his game, and we're seeing just a completely different Bonaventura. I genuinely don't have the answers to that. Montella is going to lose the team as frustrations grow. Players will start arguing with one another. Again, spot on. I literally can't disagree with any of your points. I felt like we almost saw a bit of that late on when Calhanoglu made a pass. He was intending it to go to Cutrone. Rodriguez was coming down the left, and all you saw the camera cut to all three of them barking at each other and kind of saying, whose fault was that? It's a mess, to be honest. So I agree with that point as well. Samir Mohammed at Samir Mohammed 72. He started with the negatives. Why did the team start playing like it was the UCL final after the 70th minute? It's a very similar point that we've had just there from Joey. Absolutely agree with both of you. It's quite remarkable how we decide to switch on after 70 and think, yep, we've got to go out and win this game now after keeping it in control for 70 minutes. So very, very strange. Why can we not play like this all the time? Why wait for the 70 minutes mark? There should be no reason. I feel like our best possible strategy is to take the game to teams early on within the first 15-20 minutes, blitz them. I feel like we're just too content to slow play down, just control it and just think, yeah, we'll eventually find a breakthrough when we don't. So I have no answer for that, unfortunately. Why can't Hakan play like this all the time? I felt like there were positives from him on Thursday in the Europa League, so I certainly feel like there's a level for him to get to, and it's just disappointing. I guess I think he really is a confidence player, and when the pressure gets to him and the team, he struggles more than most. So unfortunately, I think until results pick up on a consistent basis, I think we're going to see more inconsistency from him, so that's unfortunate. Kalinic did a few good things, but I'm 100% certain that Bacca would do them as well. I think that was what your point was. Ultimately, at this point, I know I barked criticism at Bacca all season long last year, but I have to agree, I don't see any difference between the two of them, and you've probably got more goals out of Bacca, so I think we've definitely had a downgrade in that department, and that's a shock for me to be saying after how much grief I gave Bacca, so that's a fair point. We need a midfielder in the January window. Kessie isn't doing anything. Again, I think I have to agree. We definitely need a midfielder first and foremost. I think we need an alternative, but he has really disappointed in recent weeks. I'm hoping he's starting to pick it up again, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Positives, should we be happy or scared that Zapata playing better than Bonucci? I guess we have to be happy for now. It was a point many made on Twitter in terms of we spent all that money over the summer, and our best players on Sunday were Zapata and Montella. So I don't know what that says about our team, but happy for him. I'm like I said, he's got a lot of criticism over the years, and he deservedly so. But he's finally stringing everything together, playing consistently well. So fair play to him, and hopefully Bonucci is starting to match him now. So we'll be happy with both of them. Flop of the match, Kalinic or Kessie? I'd probably give the vote to Kalinic. I think Kessie, you saw some positives with that strength that he showed, but Kalinic just all round, I can't pick any positives out of his performance. So Kalinic, the flop of the match for me. Man of the match, easily Zapata. Again, I'd probably have to agree. I think given my player ratings, I'd be a little bit hesitant to dish it out to Montella. So Zapata probably gets my man of the match vote as well. So good shout on that one, Samir. Good stuff, guys. Thanks again for all your questions and comments. Really do appreciate it. Keep them coming in. Subscribe on YouTube at Milan Talk. You can find us on Twitter at Milan Talk 1 and also on Facebook at the same username. I'll be back next weekend for the Benevento reaction next Sunday. Early kickoff, so we'll have something in the Sunday afternoon. Keep your eyes peeled. But another disappointing result against Torino, and ultimately it's a question now of how long are we going to have to deal with this with Montella at the helm. I feel like we probably will have to be forced into bearing it and continuing, but it is getting difficult, and we can only hope that we get 3 points next weekend and at least try and make up some ground and move up the table, but we'll have to wait and see. So thanks for listening. Appreciate all the questions and comments. Keep them coming next week. But until then, speak to you soon.